Hi there, welcome back. This is the Words on Wealth channel and my name is Zoe. And today's video is all about a new podcast that I'm absolutely loving. This whole section is about focusing on books, videos, podcasts, anything that I've read, listened to, watched over the years that people ask for recommendations on and I often forget. So hands up if you're a millennial, probably woman, who has always been looking for a podcast to dissect those slightly complex relationships we might have with money thanks to growing up in the 90s noughties. Well, if your hand is up, then I've possibly found one of the perfect podcasts for you. Let's take a look. So today I'm going to talk all about the podcast Help Me, I'm Poor. It's hosted by Ellie Austin Williams and Claire Seal, who are both quite big voices, particularly here in the UK, on financial well-being and other matters within the personal finance space. Claire Seal, for example, became really popular through her account My Frugal Year, where she talked a lot about her debt journey. Ellie Austin Williams has equally spoken a lot about attitudes toward money, money mindset, and now money and motherhood as well. If you're looking for a podcast that is an intersection between the kind of educational, real informative aspects of personal finance and a little bit of chat with the likes of media, then this is a really strong option. Help Me, I'm Poor is basically looking at lots of different films and TV programs that were released in, I think it'd be fair to say, 90s, early mid-noughties, but specifically shining a money lens on them. So we've already had episodes that have looked at the likes of Bridget Jones, Pride and Prejudice, White Lotus, firmly not actually, now I've said that, late 90s noughties because that one's relatively new, but taking into account then the attitudes that we see within them towards money and how that can reflect upon ourselves, on our own kind of behaviour around money and what that really means as well. So for millennial women, this podcast doesn't just look at the film or just the money aspect itself. The first episode kicks off with the film Bridesmaids, which I actually feel that I'd forgotten about. I mean, I knew that I'd seen it, but I couldn't necessarily fully remember the plot line or exactly what happened. So it really raced me back to I definitely have seen that film. But as somebody who is very much in the midst of wedding season, as I keep calling it, makes it sound like I'm on an episode of Bridgerton, but I'm not, but rather seeing lots and lots of friends getting married myself in the coming months, it really is quite pertinent, particularly when it's looked at of an angle as to how much weddings can cost and how that can have an impact on all of our own personal financial situations. Claire Seal talks quite openly about how when she got married, for example, it really impacted her debt situation and it can quite quickly spiral. And that really relatability, I think, is what makes this podcast quite interesting and a little bit different as well, as I say, to some of the more educational, real finance focused ones that I will come on to review, but this one is just that little bit more light-hearted. Ellie Austin Williams, who's the other host, also talks about her own experience, and they both reflect upon within the Bridesmaids episode, some of the things that they both regret of spending within their own weddings, which is always an interesting hot take, if you like. And it is nice that there is that kind of personal relatability within the podcast. Sometimes you get it, I find, with podcasts, and other times you don't. It very much just depends on the style, format and the hosts, of course, but this one is nice because you kind of get that extra level of dimension, if you like. Within latter episodes as well, they then go on to the likes of Pride and Prejudice, White Lotus and Bridget Jones. And for me, and I think a lot of people around the world, Bridget Jones is an absolutely iconic film. And of course, it's all been brought back into our headspace with the recent release of the fourth one. I think it was last year. What a tearjerker. But indeed, Bridget Jones, when it was first released, was really an iconic moment, I think, in a lot of individuals, particularly women's minds. And they dig into, for example, how Bridget Jones is portrayed as a bit of a mess. And then actually shine a light on that, because we see her as a bit of a mess, but actually she's living in her own flat. She has quite a successful job in publishing. She has friends that are all relatively successful. She has a family that seemingly are able to support her relatively well. She has quite a nice upbringing. By the looks of things, has had a relatively happy childhood. And we somehow see her as a mess. Now, a lot of this is seemingly put down to the fact that she is single. But of course, being single comes with a lot more expenses, and they dig into these kind of issues as well as to how being single is more expensive, how that can mean that actually you have to be even more, let's say, financially capable and successful to be able to get to the levels that perhaps those that are in a relationship or sharing finances in some way, shape or form might be, and what that kind of represents. They also dig in, and I often think there's a lot of links between the toxic kind of narrative that we saw in that era of Bridget Jones and films that were released at a similar time, of characters that are seen to be, for example, overweight, or characters that are seen to have a poor, let's say, body mentality. And some of the things that are said in Bridget Jones and other films, Love Actually is quoted in the podcast. I'm sure we can all think of others that are similar, that essentially mean that women get a lot of pressure put on them to spend even more. And they dig into this issue in the podcast through the lens mostly of money, but also of a wider conversation of kind of a generational topic as to what it was like growing up with that kind of film being released and what that then means for all of our attitudes towards money. One part that really interested me of that episode, and I won't ruin it all because you really should listen to it, is that they go into, in a little bit more depth, actually what it means to spend all that money on well-being products, but not really well-being, actually the likes of beauty products and health products that are promising some sort of weight loss or transformation when it comes to your body, and what the impact of that can be, not just on your own mentality, but also on your finances. I think in it they say, and I always should write this down, they say something about one of the best ways that you can get your money to a place that you want it to be is to just love yourself a little bit more. And they really tie this into as well marketing and how you become, for example, for major companies, the more that you love yourself, the less powerful of a consumer you are, because you're less likely to spend on the things that they're trying to sell to you. Fascinating stuff, really thought-provoking, and absolutely loads of food for thought within it. So who should be listening to this podcast then? Well, personally, I think it's for anybody that likes a little bit of an intersection between media and finance, wants something a little bit more lighthearted when it comes to their listening around finances, or is just looking for a slightly critical view of some of those media productions that I've just spoken about, and others, of course, that are still to come. We're still, at the time of filming this video, about halfway through, I believe, the series and the releases. There'll be a lot more to come, I'm sure. And as a result, it really shows. So anybody that is looking for a different angle on some of those TV shows, this is a must listen. So that's it from me, another podcast there for you. I'll be looking at more in the coming weeks. And as I say, I'll be weaving in not just those that are focused on more entertainment, but also those that are focused on more educational aspects, on economic aspects, and also news-based ones too. Hopefully keeping those reading lists nice and full and keeping your finance content nice and busy. Do let me know if there are any that you have heard of that you want reviewing. I'm more than happy to do so. If there's anything you've seen or read in the media that I can tie in, because I am very, very open to it. Just drop it in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening. Give me a like if you're enjoying these videos, and make sure you follow too. Bye for now.